Okay, we're going to be starting on the body of the elephant, and what we want to do is we want to do a drawstring cast on. Okay. Alright, what I like to do is pull the working yarn back this direction a little bit so that weaves in front, behind, front, behind. We're starting off with 24 pegs, so you know, front, behind, weave it all the way around. Okay, then you're going to gently toss that loop over, pull that down. Okay, then you're going to go in and toss every other loop over, which should give you a total of 24 stitches when you are done. Okay, and this is a drawstring cast on. And we're working from bottom to top. Okay. Now at this point, what you want to do is you want to knit for 3 rows. Okay. So you're just going to go around and you're going to knit for 3 rows. Alright. So pause the video and knit for 3 rows, and then we'll come back. We'll be doing a 4 wedge increase, and then you're going to repeat that until you have a total of 48 stitches. So this is a 4-row repeat that we're starting. So you're going to knit 3 rows first, and then you're going to do a wedge increase on all 4 wedges, and you're going to repeat that until you have a total of 48 pegs that you're using. So go ahead and pause the video, complete your 3 rows, and then I'll show you how to do the wedge increase. Okay, we're ready to wedge increase, and how this works is you're going to knit to your first wedge peg. Okay, then you're going to pull the working yarn towards the inside of the loom. You're going to pull your previous stitch loop here, as you can see, it's the first one. You're going to pull it back, keep hold of it, don't let go of it. Then you're going to take your working yarn and wrap it in front of the stitch and toss it back. This is considered a twin knit, but I also like to use this method as an increase. You're going to smooth that stitch to the previous peg. Alright, now you're going to knit your wedge pegs. Alright, then you're going to pull that previous stitch back. Okay, and then you're going to wrap that working yarn around the front and then replace that stitch and move it to a previous peg and then knit the stitch over. Then what you want to do is take and move the wedge down 1, and then on those stitches you created, you're going to take the stitch off and move it to the next empty peg, and you'll have just done an increase. Okay, that's how you do an increase. So I'm going to show you one more time. You're going to knit your way over, and you're going to do this with all 4 wedges. Okay, so you knit your way over to your first wedge peg, and you're going to go in and you're going to find that previous stitch. Now make sure your working yarn is on the inside of the loom on this one. Okay, so you're going to pull back that previous stitch, don't release it, put the working yarn in front of the peg, and then put your stitch back. Pick that stitch you just made up, put it onto the previous peg, and then knit your wedge pegs. Holding the working yarn on the inside of the loom, pull that previous stitch back, put the working yarn in front of the peg, and then replace that stitch you just picked up. Place that stitch you just created onto the previous peg and knit that stitch over. take your wedge, loosen the washer, push it down one slot, pick up the stitches you just made, and put them onto the empty peg. Okay. Now you want to do this all the way around. You want to repeat this step. Knit 3 rows, then wedge increase for a row on all 4 wedges. Do this for a total of 3 times, or when you have 48 stitches total. Alright, so pause the video, get your bottom done, and then when we come back, we're going to start working on doing the openings for the leg areas. Okay. Okay, after you do your increase, you're going to do 1 knit around after your last increase, just to make sure that you aren't going to be interfering with your increase stitches. So you'll do 1 round of knit, okay, and then we'll be ready to start working out our leg area. Okay, and you're going to need a piece of paracord and stitch markers. Alright, because we're going to do the seamless method. Now if you want to do a method that has options to it, you'll need to go in and see my Loom teddy bear body, and it'll show the different ways if you are not so sure about doing this method. But this method I find to be the smoothest method to do, and you don't have to worry about it. Okay, so okay, now we're ready to start our leg area. And what we want to do is we want to pull out several stitch markers. Okay, I'm going to pull out 14. Here's 14. Now I'll take care of our first leg, and I'm going to show you how to do this. Alright, so what you want to do is you just want to knit your first stitch. Okay, and then at this point you want to take off the stitches, and as you take them off, you want to place a stitch marker in there. Alright, now normally I used to use stitch holders, but because this loom can be kind of difficult to add stitches back with a stitch holder, you'll want to do little stitch markers that can do like this. So you just want to take off 14. You know, you're not knitting them, you're just going to take off straight off 14 stitches. Okay, and this is 1/2 that'll be reattached to the loom to do the leg. Alright, you're going to do a paracord cast on, which is not that difficult. Okay, but if you do not feel comfortable with this method, there is another method. Alright, but you'll need to go in and watch the leg application for the bear body. Alright, and those are your options, but you're still going to be working with 14 pegs. I don't believe I worked with that many on the bear, but you're going to be working with the 14 pegs here. So whichever way you want to choose it, if you want to say bind off and then cast on, that's a way of doing it too. Okay, if you just want to say take off this method and then cast on, you can. All the options are on the bear body, but I find this has a seamless look to it, and it really is not all that difficult. And when you go to add the stitches back to the loom, it's really easy compared to working with your bind off and cast on markers. Okay, that gets a little bit more complicated and harder to deal with. Alright, now if you wanted to just go ahead and take off 14, there's knit 1 here, you want to take off 14 over here, you can, and go ahead and have that done if you would prefer. But I usually like to work as I go, but when I get to that section, I'll tell you to do it just like this section. Okay, so this is the leg area, but you are going to be working a tail. And this is one of those difficult rows, okay? I'm not going to say it's an easy row, it's a difficult row, all right? Because you're prepping to do a leg. And legs are easy. The legs are going to be even easier than on the bear. All right, so there's our 14. Make sure it's 14. Count it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. As you see, it's 14. Now what we want to do is we want to do a paracord cast on. So get your paracord. And this was developed by Janae. So thank her if you like this. So stick your paracord in there. All right, and your working knot's going to be the inside. And you're going to lay the paracord in there. And you're going to wrap it on top of the paracord and in front of the peg. Then go up under the paracord with your working arm and in front of the peg. Go up under the paracord and in front of the peg. Under the paracord and in front of the peg. Now the thing is you don't want a real long paracord, so you can just kind of pull it out as you go. Alright, so under, over, under, over, and you want to keep that consistency, okay, because that consistency is going to matter when you go to add the stitches back to the loom. Okay, so under and over, under and over, and under and over, and under and over. You're going to do that on all 14 stitches, okay? And then once you have that, you may want to have 2 paracords for this. Usually I just get this set up, I knit my way over, then I slowly take out the paracord and add my stitch markers in so that I'm just ready to roll. Alright, okay, so we've come to our last stitch. Alright, so we paracord cast on. This gives a seamless look. Alright, and what we want to do is on that stitch we're going to knit our way over to the tail area. Okay, and that is, looking at my notes, I'm going to add the tail separately on this one because I think it's going to be easier to do that. Okay. So we're going to add the tail separately. But normally we would do a tail in here and it would be in the center back. Alright. And it could be a series of short rows, but I did not write that into my notes. I really want to do a tail. So I'm going to pause the video. I'm going to write my tail notes up, okay, and we will go from there. But at this point, that is your leg, and you're going to be doing the same thing over here when you get over here. You want to count out where your 14 stitches are, right? And keep this in mind because you're going to be doing the leg area again at the top of the body. It's not going to be like the bear body where you have arms. You're going to just do entirely legs, and they're all going to be kind of sitting forward. So that's how this is going to be made. All right, so pause the video, get that much done, and I will work you up a tail so that you have an idea of how to do that. What you're going to do is you're going to be working 8 stitches. All right, if you want to mark those, you can. They're going to be right in the back. So 1, 2, 3, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. You can put a stitch marker here so you know which stitches you're working on, because you're working a total of 8 stitches in the center back. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Lift that up. Working between these stitch markers. Okay. Alright, so that means you're going to be knitting for 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So in between your legs you will knit 5 stitches. Alright, at this point you're going to be working a series of short rows just like you did the ears. You're going to have an increase of 4 and that kind of thing. So what you're going to be doing is you're going to be working for a total of 20 rows back and forth between these 8 stitches. Alright, alright, and you're going to be slipping the end stitches. Okay, so this is going to be row 1. So you're going to knit over those 8 stitches, and there is row 1. You can put a stitch marker on that end peg because you're going to be slipping it. Okay, and you're going to be adding them back as you go. Alright, now what you may want to do is also go in and put stitch markers so that you can easily, just like we did on the ears, put stitch markers so that you can close off the tail and you don't have to worry about trying to stuff the tail. So you may want to do that. So for this project you probably want a lot of stitch markers. You probably want at least 100. Alright, so I need to actually go in and put stitch markers on my previous 8 pegs so that I know what I am doing. So since I just made that one, I need to go back 1. Alright, I'm going to do that on all 8 stitches. So you can skip doing a tail if you want. You don't have to do this section. You just knit over to your next 14. But I find tails just add a little extra character. Okay, so yeah, you add your stitch markers, all 8, because you're going to bring all 8 stitches back to close off the tail. And then we're going to be doing 20 rows back and forth between the 8 stitches. Okay, and you're going to be knitting the last stitch, slipping the first stitch, and placing a stitch marker on it, just like we did here, just like we did on the ears. I'll show you when we start increasing what you need to do. Okay, but at this point what you want to do is go in and do your 20 rows, get your stitch markers on. And this is if you forget, so you know that you've just created a row. You know you need to find your second chain. So there's your first chain, and there's your second stitch. Okay, so you know once you have your first stitch, you just go for your second stitch. If you forget, like I just did, to mark those. Okay. Not difficult. You just find your second stitch. There's my first stitch. There's my second. And again, this uses a lot of stitch markers, but if you have a yarn you can't see nothing on, like this one where it's hard to see, use them. Makes it a lot easier. The other thing you can get safety pins, because you can buy those by the hundreds too, and that's fairly inexpensive, but it does make it easier to have this method going. Okay, just letting you know. Alright, now I should have all 8 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Alright, I got my previous stitches marked. I suggest doing it if you're going to do that. Also, mark those first stitches off. Alright, but if you forget and you do like I just did, and you're like, oh yeah, I need to do that, that's how you do that. You go to the second stitch back. Slip that first stitch, knit your way over. I'll show you this so you know what we're doing. But we're doing 20 rows where we're adding a chain to the end so that we can add it back. Alright, so we're doing a technique where we're doing a series of short rows to create an appendage, just like we did with the ears. Alright, so go ahead and put you a stitch marker on that slip stitch. Okay, and this is row 2. Alright, let's go ahead and pause the video, complete your 20 rows. We'll come back and I'll show you the increase section so that we can keep going. Okay, we have done our rows, as you can see. Okay, you can see all these stitch markers. At this point we need to be increasing. Okay, so what we want to do is we're right here. We want to just wrap and turn the next peg and knit our way over. At this point we don't need to use stitch markers, okay? So we're going to knit our way over, and you're going to increase a total of 4 times. Now if you remember the ears, we increased and we made sure we did not touch our original loop on the peg. So again, you're going to wrap and turn, and this will do 2 increases. Okay, and then you're going to knit your way over. Okay, we're to our increased peg, and we don't want to touch that original stitch. Alright, don't touch it, and toss that loop over. We're going to do another increase, so we're going to wrap and turn the next peg. Alright, I'm going to shove those down. And this will increase, this will be our 3rd increase. Okay, and we're going to knit our way over. Okay, remembering not to touch that original stitch. Going to wrap and turn again, which is increasing it our 4th time, and then we're going to knit our way over. And what we're creating here is the hairy end of the tail of an elephant. So we're creating the wider part of the tail at the tip is what we're doing here. Okay, and here. Now we're ready to move on to the next section. Okay, at this point you're going to knit for a total of 12 rows back and forth between your pegs you just created, your increase section. Okay, so you're going to slip the first peg and you're just going to knit back and forth for 12 rows. Okay, now if you want to create more of a point, you'll want to change this up a little bit. Okay, so if you're happy with what you're doing, you can go ahead and do the 12 rows. But if you'd like for your tail to kind of have a little point to it, you can do another short row within a short row. I know this is complicated, but you can. And so now that we've just kind of knitted back this way and then back, what you can do is you can go in and you can knit just before the last increase, and you can kind of work your way down to a point, or gradually just to a few. Alright, so you can knit over to here. The object is to get approximately 12 rows. Okay, so you can decrease down for that many. Alright, so I'm going to slip this stitch and then I'm going to knit to just before my last increase peg. Alright, there's my last increase, just for my last increase peg. Alright, then I'm going to knit over and stop just before my first increase peg. And what you're creating here is you're going to create a rounder effect at the tip of the tail. Okay, so we're going to stop here. Alright, and then we're going to knit our way over. We're going to slip that first stitch. And we're going to knit our way over to just before our first increase peg as well. I'm going to stop, and then we're going to knit our way over to our stitch marker. Okay, we're going to stop at the stitch marker, and then we're going to slip and do the same thing on the other side. Slip it and knit your way over to the stitch marker. Then at this point we're going to be adding these back in, and we've done our kind of gradual thing, so we're going to stop there. Okay, at this point what you're going to do is you're going to knit all the way to the stitch marker, and then to the stitch marker, and then to the point over here, your first increase, and then to your first increase over here, and then to your second increase, and to your second increase. Alright, and then we'll stop. Okay, so I'll show you what that means. You're going to slip your first stitch, and then you're going to work your way over. So you're going to go in and you're going to add everything back in now, slowly and gradually. Okay, so you slip the first peg, and then you knit your way to there. Then you're going to slip your first peg and then knit over to your first increase. Slip it and knit over to your first increase on the other side. And then you want to knit to your last increases on both sides, and then we will start decreasing. Okay. At this point we're getting past the tip of the tail, and we're starting to work our way back up to the other side. And once we decrease our way back down to where we're supposed to be, and we're going to knit that increased peg right there. Okay, and we're going to slip and knit our way over. And then we'll be ready to start trying to decrease and get our way back down to our original pegs that are marked. Okay. And then we can start adding our stitch markers back on to the end, just like we did the ear. Okay. So, and knit. Okay. Now at this point we want to start decreasing, so we're going to take that end stitch that we increased over here, and we're going to move it over, and then we're going to slip the first stitch and knit your way over. Okay, and then knit the two together. Alright, you're going to do the same thing on this side. You're going to take that end stitch, you're going to move it over. Keep remembering not to knit the original stitch over on those pegs. Alright, and you're going to knit your way over and knit the two pegs, the two stitches together. Decrease down again. Which should get you back to your original stitches over here. And knit the two stitches together. and decrease your last stitch over. Set the first and knit your way over. Now what you want to do is start adding your chains back in. Okay, so you find the one that's closest to the peg you're working on. Alright, and this is going to be a repeat, and you should be able to start kind of shoving that tail down in there. Okay, so you want to find your first chain that shows up in here. Okay, so that looks like that's it. That's the closest one. Alright, so you want to add that in. Then you want to knit your way over, knit the two together, add your next chain over here, and you're going to do that until you're down to your original 8 stitch markers, and then we'll go from there. Okay, here's my tail, as you can see. Alright, now I'm down to my last 8 stitch markers, and I've ended on this side. Okay, but I need to be on this side. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to slip that first stitch. I'm just going to knit my way over. Okay, at this point I'm going to add my original stitches back. I'm going to go over here and find my first stitch and put it on, and then just put it on all 8 to close off the tail. Okay, and my last one. And then what I'll do is take all my stitch markers off. I'm going to keep them open because I'll need it for over here. Okay, so now you have 2 stitches, all those, and now what you want to do is you want to knit both stitches over on all 8 pegs. Okay. Okay. What we want to do now is you might want to add like little stitch markers in between your paracord, because you're going to eventually need to take the paracord out, and when you do, you want those stitches kind of marked so you don't have to do it later and accidentally drop a stitch and that kind of thing, because that can be a pain. So you may want to just go ahead and add stitch markers in here so that when you go to take the paracord out later, you don't lose those stitches. Okay, so I've gone in and added stitches, and all you do is you send the stitch marker through and then slide it to the middle of the loom. Okay, now you'll see that I've already taken off my 12 stitches and left the one over here. Okay, so you want to do the exact same thing that you did over here. Okay, now I went ahead and put stitch markers on all the 12 and took off the stitches. Now you're going to knit 5 stitches over, and then at this point you're going to start your paracord cast on from here. Remember, you're going to stick your paracord in front of your working yarn, wrap the working yarn around the front of the peg. Okay, then you're going to take it up under and over and around the front of the peg. Up, under, over, and around the front of the peg. When you do that a few times, you pull the paracord through. Alright, so under, over, around the front of the peg, under, over, around the front of the peg, under, over, around the front of the peg. You can do this all the way until you meet your last stitch of the row. Okay, and then you'll knit that last stitch. Okay, so you'll have paracord cast on your 12 stitches. At this point, you're going to start knitting your way around for a total of 28 rows. But what you'll want to do is you'll probably want to pause and go ahead and do the stitch marker thing like you do over here, and I'll show you kind of how that's done. What you do is you stick the stitch marker up through the stitch, you pull it into the middle of the loom, and you close it off. Sorry if my hands are in the way. Close it off and leave it in there, and you'll see that it sits there. Okay, and what that'll do is when you go to pull it out, because you'll need these a little later, you can't pull them out beforehand, because if you do, you'll have one heck of a mess. It's the reason why this filming got messed up. Okay, so do not pull a paracord out until you've done a few rows, and then after you've done a few rows, you have these stitch markers already set up, so that when you go to pull the paracord out and attach the stitches later, it'll go very smoothly. Okay, so you'll want to go ahead and do that, and then at this point you're just going to be knitting in the round for a total of 28 rows. Okay, so try to get that stitch marker out of the way. Alright, so you're going to knit your way around for 28 rows. And what that paracord is doing is providing a tensioning to create a stitch, which is why you do not want to move it. Okay? And if you went off and bought paracord, you should have plenty if you wanted to just leave it in for both these leg holes and the next leg holes. Alright? So, go ahead and pause the video and complete your 28 rows. And then when we come back, we're ready to do the upper legs. That's going to be done on the exact same pegs in the exact same way, but I'll show you how to go in and remove the paracord so that you can use it for the upper legs. Okay, so go ahead and pause the video, get your 28 rows done, and that should conclude the bottom half of the body. Okay, I've finished my several rows for the body. You can see the openings for the legs that I've done here, and we're going to create another series of openings for the legs. There's your tail. And so we're going to create another series of openings for your upper legs as well. So I'm going to knit the first peg, and then I'm going to place stitch markers on 14 stitches, and I'm going to take those off and then do a paracord cast on. So as I put them on, I can go ahead and take the stitch off. Okay, I'm going to do that for 14 stitches. So pause the video and get your 14 stitches off, just like we did on the previous legs, and then be ready to have your paracord ready to do a paracord cast on for the upper legs. Alright, so pause the video, get that much done, and we'll come back and be doing a paracord cast on over the next 14. Okay, as you can see, we've cleared off our 14 stitches and we're ready to do a paracord cast on. And what you want to do is get your paracord in front of your working yarn, wrap around the front of the empty peg, up under the under the paracord, back in front of the peg, up under and over paracord and in front of the peg, up under and over in front of the peg. You're going to do this across the 14. You've now paracord cast on, and now what you want to do is you want to knit over 18. So here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. Okay, then what you want to do is the same thing you just did over here. You want to start taking your stitches off on the next 14, and then you're going to do a paracord cast on. So go ahead and pause the video and get your 14 stitches off, and then we'll paracord cast on the next 14 stitches and then be almost done with the body. Okay, so we'll have a few more rows to do after we do this process, and then we will be completing things. Okay, so pause the video, get your 14 stitches off, and then we'll paracord cast on the next 14. Okay, I've taken off my 14 stitches and I'm ready to do a paracord cast on. And as we did previously, we're going to do this again. I'm going to stick the paracord in front of the working yarn, wrap the working yarn around the front of the empty peg, then go up under the paracord, over and in front, under, over and in front. You can do that over all the 14 empty pegs. And one more, and knit. Now what you may want to do in order to make it easier when you go to take the paracord off, to make sure you don't lose any stitches, you are going to go in and, for instance, this first one, you're going to go ahead and go in and put a stitch marker in and move that stitch marker to the inside of the loom, and you'll do that over the 14 stitches on this side and this side. And what that'll do is when you go to take the paracord out later, which I've done, you don't lose any stitches when trying to put a stitch marker in. Okay, and then once you've done that, what you want to do is you want to be starting to work the top of the body where the head's going to be attached. So you'll knit around for 3 rows. And then decrease. Knit around for 3 rows, decrease. Continue that process until you're down to 24 stitches, and that'll complete the body if you already kind of have an idea of what we're doing here. Okay, so pause the video, get your stitch markers on there, and then do 3 rounds of knit. So knit for 3 rounds. So once you get all this done, then you can go in and knit. So pause the video, get your stitch markers on your stitches, knit for 3 rounds, and when we come back we'll be ready to do a wedge decrease row. Okay, I've completed my 3 rows and I'm ready to go in and do a wedge decrease. I'm going to push all my wedges down 1 slot, and then I'm going to move those over like we've been doing. So we're going to decrease down 1 slot, then we're going to take these straggling stitches and we're going to move them over to the wedge pegs on all 4 wedges. Okay, and then we're going to repeat the process of where we knit 3 rows, and we decrease a row until we are down to 24 stitches. At that point we will do one more row of knit, and then we will be binding off. We're not going to do a drawstring, we're just going to bind off. Alright, and then we'll be ready to start our legs. Alright, there's our last one. Okay, and then what we want to do is we want to go in and knit around. When we get to the wedge pegs, we knit both stitches over. Alright, and knit both stitches over. Knit both stitches over. Alright, and this is your decrease row. After that, you're going to do 3 rows knit, 1 row decrease row on all 4 wedges, and the goal is to get down to 24 stitches. Once you do your last wedge decrease, you're going to do 1 row of knit, and then we'll be ready to do a bind off. We're just going to be doing a regular bind off. So if you already know how to do a regular bind off, you can do that, or you can wait and I can show you how to do that. But at this point, you can see that you've got 1 leg hole, 2 leg hole, 3, and 4. Alright, and so pause the video, get that much done to where we're down to the neck area to bind off, and then we'll be ready to start working on the limbs, okay? So pause the video, get that much done, and we'll start on the legs. Okay, I have completed everything and have decreased my way down. Next is to actually go in and just bind off. So I'm going to knit 2, move 1 over, toss the bottom, move over to get started, then knit 1, move over, toss the bottom, move over. Alright, so go ahead and pause the video, get your body binded off, and then we can start on the limbs, and I can go from there. Okay, so pause the video, get your bind off done, and then we'll start on the limbs. Okay, we finished binding off our neck area here, and we're going to be ready to start adding our stitches back. Alright, and what we want to do is we want to take out our paracord here. Make sure you got all your stitches locked in. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to, because we brought off 14 and are putting back on those 14 that we took off, and then the 14 we cast on, you should have 28 pegs that you're working with. Okay, and at this point you want to set up your loom for 28. Okay, so you can see that we have 4 legs that we gotta do. Okay, so what I've done is I've taken my 24 and then I've moved 2 of my wedges over out a single notch, which should 26, 28. Alright, so what you want to do is you want to go in and you want to pull the item up through the middle of the loom. Okay, now there's really nothing really special that we're going to be doing with the elephant leg. Mostly we're adding our stitches back, and then we're going to do so many rows and that kind of thing. So it doesn't matter how you set your stitches up for the most part on this. Like the bear it was, but we're not creating any like foot or anything. We're going to keep it really simple. So what you want to do is you want to take and you want to add your stitches back from your stitch markers that you've placed in, okay? And you want to do that gently all the way around, and you should have a total of 28. Now I find it's easier to do this method of adding back. Now you can do a different type of method, which you'll want to watch the body for the bear, and that'll show you the different types. Okay, and there's different ways to add the limbs back, but no matter what, you're going to be working your 28 stitches. Okay, so go ahead and pause the video and add your stitches back that you marked. Now be aware, these stitches could have tried to pull through a previous stitch depending on your stitch markers you chose to use. Make sure that you are actually pulling the stitch. Okay. Alright, let's pause the video, get all your stitches added back, and then you'll need to take off your stitch markers, and we'll go from there. Okay, as you can see, I've added all my stitches back. I've done a slip knot to add my new yarn back. Now, you may have sections between your connecting points, but I don't think so. So mostly what you want to do is you want to start just knitting your way around for a total of, what did I calculate?
I got too far.
You want to knit for 28 rows. So go ahead and pause the video and knit around for 28 rows, and then we will come back and do our next section. Okay, so get that much done. Okay, at this point I've done 29 rows and I'm ready to go in and do a row of purl. As you can see, we're here. We want to do a row of purl. Then we will do a 2 wedge decrease, whichever wedge has the extra. You're going to decrease it down, and then we're going to do, and I'll show you how to do that. But the next thing is we're going to do a purl stitch all the way around, just one row. And what that does is it kind of flattens the limb. Okay, so what you want to do is you want to purl all the way around, and then we'll come back and we'll start finishing up the tip of the leg. Okay, at this point we want to knit for 2 rows. So you're just going to knit your way around for 2 rows. So go ahead and pause the video and complete your 2 rows of knit, and then we'll come back and be ready to do a 2 wedge decrease. Okay, now we're ready to do a 2 wedge decrease. It doesn't matter where. You just want to take those ones that are out an extra slot in one. Doesn't matter where they're at, if they're beside each other or they're across from each other. You just want to take those wedges in one. Alright. Then you're going to take the stitch off and put it on the next peg. Stitch off. Put on the wedge peg. Alright. And that should put you down to 24 stitches. Okay. At this point, you just want to knit your way around, and you will knit the 2 stitches together on your wedge pegs. Okay. and then knit your way around. Alright, so pause the video, complete your decrease row, and then we'll come back and finish up the... Okay, at this point, now what you'll want to do is 2 rows of knit. So you'll just want to knit around for 2 rows, and then we will be ready to do a drawstring bind off. You'll need to cut you a long tail, because we're going to be going around twice, taking off every other stitch, and then doing another round, taking off the rest of the stitches. Okay, so go ahead and pause the video, complete 2 rounds of knit, and then we'll come back. Okay, at this point what we want to do is we want to cut us a nice long tail, and we're going to skip that first stitch, and we're going to toss the next stitch over and pull through. If you are messing with this delicate yarn, be gentle with your pull through. Okay, skip the next stitch and toss the next one over and pull the tail through. You want to do every other stitch at this point. So toss it over, pull through, and this will give you a nice flat end. I'll draw stringing off. Okay, we're back around at the beginning. We're going to skip this first peg again and go to the next one. And now you're just going to toss the rest of them over. Okay. Toss the last one over, pull through. Then you can put your loom to the side. Okay, at this point what you want to do is you want to find your tail here. Alright, and then you'll see this loose part here. Okay, see if I can get it to focus. There we go. So you see your chain, you see your tail here, and then you see this up above it. Pull this up above it. Now get your inner stitches drawstrung in first. Then what you want to do is pull the outer chain, and if you are working with this delicate fabric, be very gentle. Okay, now what you want to do is, I like to pull on it a little bit so that it stretches out and does more of a circular look about it. Okay, and at this point I'm going to push the tail into the middle of the... What you want to do is you want to pull this inside, and you want to tie it off, as you can see I've done, and you don't have to cut it because it just adds a stuffing. Alright, and then at this point you'll want to close off the body, the bottom of the body, which is here, and that's not difficult. Send it through and tie it off. You may need to do the star stitch to make sure that the bottom looks completely closed. At this point, you'll want to go in and you'll want to stuff the body. And so pause the video, stuff the body. I suggest stuffing the limbs first, then stuffing the body. And at this point, we should be ready to actually sew on the head, okay, after you stuff your body. So when we come back, I'm going to show you how to sew on the head. But go ahead and do all your limbs and tie off the limbs, and then close up the bottom, and then stuff, and we'll be ready to come back and sew on the head. Okay, kind of hard to see, but we've stuffed our body. Let's see if I can pull that up some. Okay, so we stuffed our body, and at this point we're ready to attach our head on top, which is hard to show. Alright, but what we want to do is we want to line the back of the head up with the tail and the front of the head up. And what I have set up here is a long strand, and I'm not using the same as this because I have to sew and I need it secured. And I put a slip knot in there. So what I want to do is find my center, stick that through the base of the body and then through the base of the head. And I will try to keep this as much in screen as possible, but this is easier said than done. Okay, so once you do that, you're going to slip your needle through there, that slip stitch, and tighten. Alright, At this point, you're going to sew around, and it should add up. And what you want to do is you want to make sure that the front of the head is right where it's supposed to be down the center as well. So what you want to do is try to keep this in screen. You just want to sew it on. You don't have to be so exacting like you do on most of the things that I do. Alright, and then you're just going to take the base of the head and the base of the body and sew it around. Okay, so go ahead and pause the video and sew on your head, and what that'll do is conclude how to make an elephant. And that's how you do it. Now you can use this body if you'd like. If you like the look of this body, you can use this body and skip doing the tail, and that'll conclude if you want to do other animals with the different heads and stuff. So you can also do this body for other things and just skip the tail area, okay? So go ahead and finish up your elephant, sew on your head, and that is how you make an elephant on the Universal X Loom.